The only way you have answers is you have people that are doing their jobs, whether that's as a medical doctor, as an RN, as an insurance person, whatever. People who are doing their job, who know what's happening, who know what works and what doesn't. And you have to have people in the field put together the solutions, and you have to bring them to Washington. Okay? They have to come from southern Minnesota to Washington. Now, I want to give you one example that's very, just related to that. It's not quite the same thing, but it's related to it. And that is this. A lot of you know that regarding Obamacare and so on, a lot of you know I'm the guy that discovered the marriage tax that is built into Obamacare. And let me give you an example of how bad this is. Example, a couple making $60,000 a year, equally divided man and woman, under private insurance, under Obamacare, will pay for their medical insurance $10,425 more if they're married than if they live together unmarried. Now that may sound to you like a shocking statement, and you might say that can't be true. Well, 2 months ago, Minnesota Public Radio did a fact check, they call it their polygraph test, on exactly what I said. And guess what they concluded and what they said? They printed their article and said, guess what? Quist is exactly right in what he's saying. Of course, I knew I was right. I told him that. The Heritage Foundation and 2 U.S. House research committees have verified exactly what I told you. This is not my opinion. This is hard fact. Just get out the bill, look at the formulas, run the numbers. Now, this is a couple making $60,000. Let's take a couple making $30,000. Okay? They're going to pay over $5,000 more. So that's not so bad. Except if you're making $30,000 combined, how are you going to make your house payments? How are you going to donate to your church? Okay? How are you going to take a vacation if you're paying an extra $5,000 as compared to a couple not married? And let me be very clear and very explicit. Obamacare is designed to destroy marriage for the middle class. Yep. Am I making myself clear? Yep. Okay. It is. It is designed to destroy marriage for the middle class. And if any of you want to ask me to give more detail, it takes some time, or relay it privately, I'll tell you why it's that way, why it works that way, but I assure you, that's how it works. And interestingly, the Tim Walzes of the world who voted for this thing with a big smile on their face, none of them question the accuracy of what I've told you, because they all know it's true. So am I going to go after Tim Walz for discrimination against married people? Oh, you bet. Get used to that word discrimination, because this bill engages in horrific discrimination against married people. And if there is life yet in this body on November 7th, every southern Minnesotan is going to know it. And they're going to be asking Tim Walz how he can justify discriminating against married people. By the way, I want you to know, I think the federal government does not have an interest in whether people marry or not. That's not our business. But we cannot penalize people, persecute people, if they decide to marry. It's really something. Pastor, or Representative Gunther, Bob.
You know, I look at what the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court said.
Yes.
That Obamacare is a tax.
Yes.
Do you think that if the people in Congress, including Congressman Walz,
right,
and I'd love to have you calling one, having voted for the largest tax increase in the history of the United States.
Right.
But do you think that they would vote for Obamacare had they known it was a tax?
Yes.
And not
I think they would have. I think they would have. I mean, these people are. The Tim Walz of the world. I won't speak for all of them.
They were paid to vote that.
Well, I mean, I think that Bob. I think Tim Walz loves Obamacare. I mean, I've followed his website for years. I mean, Tim Walz, I don't know if he still has it up there. I mean, he used to have single payer up on his website. He used me, I don't know if it's still there, he used to have cap and trade up on his website. I mean, this is radical stuff. this is not just liberal. I mean, this is off the left edge. So I think Tim Walz, you know, I know he tries to say, well, I'm thinking about whether I'm really going to vote for this.
He voted for it 2 days ago again. He voted for Obamacare 2 days ago.
He voted, that's right, he voted for Obamacare again 2 days ago, and I didn't hear any, you know, anguish coming out of his seat in D.C. like, oh, can I really do this? He loves this stuff. Yes, sir.
Using your chart there,
yes.
If you go out 5 years, that's when you say you're going to have the balanced budget.
Yes.
Okay, we're at 16 trillion right now. 5 years from now, we could be 25 trillion.
Right.
Okay? How can you possibly pay that off simply by cutting government and not raising taxes? Doesn't it seem like at some point you're going to have to raise taxes on people?
You know, I just want to be totally clear. If you choose to elect me, raising taxes is off the table. I just want you to know where I'm coming from. I don't like to be mealy-mouthed. It's off the table. Why do I say that? For lots of reasons. One is, as soon as you raise taxes, go back to the chart, imagine the chart of the growth of government. As soon as you raise taxes, you're putting more weight on the sled. And we have to take weight off that sled so free enterprise can flourish. As soon as you raise taxes, you put more weight on the sled. You put more weight on the sled, what happens? The economy slows down. Unemployment goes up, tax revenue goes down. Example, the UK, United Kingdom, 4 or 5 months ago, raised its income taxes substantially, projecting that its tax revenue would go up by 10%. I think you know what happened. Tax revenue went down by 5%. And there are a lot of reasons for that. But anyway, again, government is too big, and the answer, as far as I see it, I want you to know, we have to shrink, downsize, think small.
I agree 100%,
yeah.
Yet you're still looking at 25 trillion. It's enormous. How do you possibly pay that off?
Here's how you pay it off. Here's how you pay it off. You do the things you need to do to get the economy rolling, and again, I'm going to use Australia as an example. If Australia's economy can grow by 5% a year, our economy can grow by 5% a year. We can do that. Take all this weight off the sled. And the economy, the engine of free enterprise, which is extraordinarily powerful, just take the weights off and it'll take off. So you grow the economy by 5% a year. After 5 years, this multiplies, of course. What have you done? You've increased your tax revenue by 30%. As you're cutting spending. Is that possible? Yes, it is. Now, what kinds of things can we cut? Well, let me give a couple of examples. You know, it's not like this is you know, really painful. And I'll hear people say that. Well, it's really going to be painful. I don't think it's going to be painful at all. I think it's going to be fun. For example, in northern Minnesota, Itasca County, as we speak, a federally funded research project is being constructed that is going to spend $50 million. Now, I don't know if that's real money for you. For me, $50 million is a big number. Okay. $50 million, and what this project is going to study is the effect of climate change on peat bogs in northern Minnesota. And so I ask you, can we live without a study that studies the effects of climate change on peat bogs in northern Minnesota? I don't think we would miss that a bit.
There's a lot of that program.
That's the problem. This is a microcosm of how the federal government is working. There are oodles. It's not a very precise number, forgive me. Lots of projects like this. Now, why would you do that? I'll tell you why. It's because the Greens are hoping that they're going to find, by the way, they're building greenhouses out in the peat bogs. To me, this is just, it makes a lot of sense. They're building greenhouses out in the peat bogs, and they're going to heat these greenhouses so they can keep the peat warm 365 days a year. This is really cool. And the idea is, as the peat is kept warm, it gives off more carbon dioxide. So what the Greens are hoping is they're going to prove that carbon dioxide is kind of a multiplier sort of deal. and we're all going to die because of carbon dioxide. All right? I mean, this is totally a political agenda. This is called science. Ladies and gentlemen, this is not science. This is not science. This is politics. And it's politics of the worst kind. So there are all kinds of programs like that. Now let me give you some more examples. I mentioned the welfare Medicaid fraud, $100 billion a year, that's real money. I don't know how many of you have seen this, but under the Obama administration, Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac have a line of credit directly to the Treasury, right? In 2012, Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac are expected to draw $200 billion. Okay, 2012 alone, directly from the Treasury. Does that suggest that we need to kind of wean Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac off the federal system? I think it does. So what has Congress and the President done about this so far? You know what? Zero. By the way, the same thing is true about economic growth, you know, and having a plan for economic growth. Ladies and gentlemen, it's not that we have a poor plan. We don't have a plan. Right? There is no plan for economic growth in the United States of America, and one of my 8.3 objectives is we're going to put together a plan for economic growth. So you have to have economic growth and spending cuts at the same time. Now, up until just a few years ago, we got by on 18% of the GDP. I am convinced we can do that again. So, just want you to know that's where I'm coming from. Yes, sir?
EPA, I had heard an estimate there was 80,000 new regulations imposed maybe in the last 12 months.
I don't know the number, but...
Well, okay, so how do you repeal, how do you rein that in?
let me just illustrate the problem a little bit first. Okay, EPA.
What was the question?
The problem is, how do you rein in the EPA? How do you rein in the EPA? But let me illustrate the problem just a little bit before I tell you what I think we have to do. A lot of us read a couple of years ago about the proposed Big Stone power plant, and this is the plant that's going to build burn Dakota coal and transmit the electricity into southern Minnesota low cost. I think you know that plant is not being built. Here's why. The plans were submitted to the EPA. The EPA said, well, you don't meet our anti-pollution guidelines. So the planners of the plant put their engineers to work. They went back and worked on it some more, came back to the EPA, and the EPA said, okay, now you meet all our anti-pollution guidelines. However, we are going to come out with carbon dioxide guidelines in 2 years that you won't meet. That is why the Big Stone power plant, which would have given low-cost, safe electricity to many, many thousands, if not millions of Minnesotans, that's why it was not built. It was because the EPA said you're not going to meet the carbon dioxide standards. All right? Now, let me add just a little bit more to that. I'm a reader, I'm a researcher, so I went to the EPA a couple months ago because I like to see what they say. I always read the left. I don't read conservatives. I always read the left. You go to the EPA website, and here's what they say. The EPA says. It says, our guideline used to be essentially cost versus benefit analysis. I mean, that's just good business. That's not good enough anymore, says the EPA. We now have new guidelines, and the new guidelines are, and one of the new guidelines was the term environmental integrity. Okay, what is environmental integrity? That's one of those terms that means whatever the EPA means it to mean. This tells me we have a federal agency that has become a tyrant. Okay, so what do? Congress needs to step out of the shadows. And this is part of my whole approach to what we need to do. Congress has done a run and hide act for years. Let me just give one quick example of that. Last spring, early summer, Congress voted on a bill that it called the line item veto bill. All right, so everybody could vote for this bill and go home and say, I voted for the line item veto bill. Well, I'm one of these guys that reads the bills. Nobody reads the bills, but I read the bills. So before I was going to talk about it, I wanted to read it. It's only 2 pages. Guess what? There is no line item veto in the line item veto bill.